Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
And I'm going to go ahead and share the screen. And hopefully you're going to see it in a second. There we are. Okay. So we had talked about a Todah offering, and we talked about the bread that went along with it. But now we're talking about something different. We're talking about a neder or nedava, right? Neder is to take an oath that you will bring an offering, and a nedava is where you point to the animal that you're going to bring and you vow to bring that animal. So we had read yesterday that you had a little more time on the Todah offering. You had the day and the following night to consume the offering. But here in this particular case, you are going to have 2 days in which to consume it. And we're going to read some other details regarding this. Now, before we get into the Rashi, that's where we left off. What the immediate takeaway is the amount of care and respect that is involved in this service. That when you consider yourself coming in front of royalty to the nth degree, this is suggestions. These are the commandments of the specifics and the mindfulness that you have to display in this case. And this is true of human sovereignty. Like I've seen, instructions that when you go and visit British royalty and you're presented before British royalty, there's so many steps you're supposed to take. There's such a distance that you're going to stand away. You're not allowed to turn your back, etc., etc. And here, every little detail involved in bringing such an offering has a tremendous amount of intensity as to what exactly needs to be done on every kind of level. And it is a way of displaying deep, deep respect in the presence of the Holy One, blessed be He, in the presence of the Creator. And I suppose if we were going to take away anything else, I suppose one might say that how we treat this world in general that our Creator made and fashioned, we should have the same kind of attitude about the respect that we bring to this world and the degree of thoughtfulness that we should have when we take actions that affect the world. So, onto the Rashi here. Ve'im neder or nedava, or a vow or an oath or a gift. Nedava would be a gift, oath, an oath of a gift. And here we go. Shelo hibia al hoda'ah shel nes. The hibia means to express, I believe, with your lips. In other words, to intend and express that intention that he did not express regarding an acknowledgement al nes, regarding a miracle. In other words, this isn't a situation of the Todah offering where there were those 4 different situations where a person's life was spared and which are considered miraculous, and for which one is mandated to bring a Todah offering. Okay. Eina te'una lechem, and in this case, it does not require bread. So we had read just previously about the mincha that was to be brought along with a Todah offering, but in a case of a neder or nedava, there is no requirement to bring bread. V'ne'echelet l'shnei yamim, and it can be consumed over 2 days, kamo shemufurash ba'inyan, as will be explained and detailed as we discuss this matter. So, umi mocharat, here's where he's talking about v'hanotar. So he is going to tell us, barishon ye'achel, it says, and what is left over from it on the first day, he should eat, should be consumed. And there are other versions of Rashi, Sfarim Acherim, Vahanotar Mimenu Yachel, and that which is left over from it shall be consumed. And what Rashi tells us is this Vav Zo, that is this Vav of Vahanotar, is unnecessary. That it seems unnecessary here. Okay. Hu veyesh kamohu harbe b'mikra. And he says there are any number of such examples where the conjunction, the and, is put into a list, and he's going to give us two examples. Kagon, for example, ve'ele b'nei tzivon, these are the sons of tzivon, and then it says v'aya v'ana. In other words, this vav shouldn't actually be, these are the sons of tzivon, and they were Aya and Ana, their names. But instead it says these are the sons of Tzivon and Aya and Ana. So this is this Vav that he says isn't really necessary. And I believe he's saying here, Vahanotar, this Vav of Vahanotar is similarly unnecessary. So that's Genesis chapter 36. And this is, I'm going to say, Tate v'Kodesh, or Tat v'Kodesh. I don't have vowels to help me here. V'Utzva mirames, or mirmas. Okay, so latet is to give, and it says, instead, it probably should have said la Kodesh, okay, or Tate Kodesh. In this case, it means give to the sanctuary, utsava marames, and the host, whatever host we're talking about here, was trampled underfoot. And this is from Daniel chapter 8. Going on. Vahanotar mibsar hazavach, and that remaining over from the flesh or from the meat of the offering, bayom hashlishi ba'esh yisaref. On the third day, it should be burnt in fire. So you allow these 2 days, but third day, nothing. So if that is its accompanying night isn't certain to me, right? When it says Bayom HaShlishi on the third day, normally when it comes to offerings, the day begins in the morning with a morning offering, but at least right now, it's not clarified as to whether after that second day, whether you have the accompanying night as well, and then at daybreak, you have to burn off the remnants, what's ever left over at that point. And now we get into something interesting here. Ve'im he'achol, but if it is in fact consumed, ye'achel, right? If it's indeed consumed, mibsar sevach shlamav, on the flesh or the meat of his offering of his shlam, and this is a shlamim type offering of his shlamim sacrifice. Bayom hashlishi, on the third day, lo yeratzeh, it shall not be desired. In other words, it's at this point the sacrifice is discounted. Hamakriv oto, the one who brings it, the one who offers it up, make sure, lo yechashev lo, it will not be counted for him. Pigul yihiyeh, it shall be considered pigul. And I've chosen not to translate the word pigul, although one might translate it, because he says merachak, so one might be able to translate it as obnoxious, that it's obnoxious. V'hanefesh ha'ochelet mimena, and the soul that consumes of it, avona tisa, he will bear, or that soul will bear its iniquity. So this is, as you're going to see, we're going to interpret this verse out, not to mean exactly what you're reading here, because what we're reading here appears to mean that if on the third day he eats it on the third day, in that case it's pigul, and the offering is considered retroactively unacceptable, and he is going to bear his iniquity. That will be defined later on. But that is not what it means. It doesn't mean that simply, and we're going to take a look. Rashi's going to explain it for us. Here we go. We'll start with the Rashi up here. Right. Ve'im ha'achel, and if it is consumed, ya'achel, etc. And here in the Sifra, it's also called Torat Kohanim, in this Midrash, they explain this verse. B'machashev b'shchita lo'ochlo. When it is being slaughtered, this is right at the very beginning, when the offering is brought and it is being slaughtered, he thinks, the person who's doing it, quite possibly the priest, Le'ochlo bashlishi, that at that particular time, at the very beginning, he's intending to eat it on the third day. He has it simply in his mind to eat on the third day. Hakatuv madaber. This is the context of what Scripture is speaking. It's talking about a case where someone is bringing an offering, and the priest or the individual is thinking about eating it on the third day. Yachol im achal mimenu bashlishi. We might think incorrectly that if he ate from it on the third day, yifasel or yifsal lemafreya, it would be discounted retroactively. So in other words, everything's kosher up to this point until the third day, and then he eats it on the third day, and that's forbidden, and therefore it's all at this point retroactively discounted. So don't think this. Talmud lomar, so that we don't make this mistake. Scripture teaches hamakriv oto, the one who brings it, the one who offers it up, lo yechashev. In other words, he will not be considered. So obviously, when he's offering it is the beginning of the process. So he says, hamakriv, the one who brings it, who presents it. B'sha'at hakrava hu nifsal, at the time of offering it up, of bringing it, hu nifsal, it's rendered unfit, it's rendered pasul. Ve'eino nifsal bashlishi, and it is not considered, if he ate it on the third day, the offering will not be discounted. It won't be rendered unfit. V'chein pirusho, so it is not something, so let me just to be clear, he had all the right intentions. Day one came by, day two came by, and then on the third day, this person ate it. And what Rashi is telling us, based on what the Torah Kohanim is saying, is that the offering is still considered legitimate. Yes, he's going to tell you the punishment. He's going to still have to bear responsibility for eating it on the third day, but the offering is still considered valid. However, when he brings it and slaughters it at the very point when he is starting the process of offering it up, if at that time he is thinking of eating it on the third day, at this point, the whole offering is null and void. Okay, and not only that, but it is considered a very serious sin. Okay, so v'chein pirusho. So this is its explanation. B'sha'at, at the time, hakravato, when it's being brought, lo ta'ale alzot, you shall not, at this particular point, it should not come to you, you should not think at this particular idea of eating it on the third day. The im chashav, and if in fact he intended to eat it on the third day, pigul yihiyeh, at that point it will be considered pigul. So let's see what happens. V'hanefesh ha'ochelet mimena avonat tisa, right? The soul that consumes of it will bear its iniquity. So v'hanefesh ha'ochelet mimena, the one who actually consumes it. Afilu, even if, yeah.
Just a quick question. So is that applying? Okay, before I think you used the example of the person bringing it, but also the priest, who is administering it. Yes. So who, is it just it's the person who's bringing it has that thought at the beginning, then it's all all this happens, or was it the is it anybody who has that thought at the beginning, then the whole thing becomes null and void?
So I can tell you that generally this kind of mitzvah is addressed to the priest, but I believe it also, since the Baal is supposed to eat it, and there's always the possibility that he will eat it on the third day, I would say to both. Okay.
Okay.
Now, what Rashi is going to tell us now is that if either of them have this in mind when the offering is slaughtered, and they go and they should eat it on the third day, even if they eat it on the first or second day when it's normally permitted, okay, it says betoch hazman, even if he eats it within the acceptable time of ona tisa, it's still considered, he still bears his iniquity. So intention is huge here. In other words, I think what it's saying, what Rashi's telling us, is if his intention is to eat it on the third day, which is a direct violation of the mitzvah and the privilege of being able to bring such an offering, and if he has this in mind, even if he didn't eat it on the third day, even if he ate it on the first or second day and didn't wind up eating it on the third day, but because he had that intention when he slaughtered the animal, he is going to bear his iniquity. How important intention is. And by the way, bearing his iniquity is a divine punishment.
Okay, and it's only the thought is only occurring at the moment that he's slaughtering the animal, because effectively that's the sacrifice point. So at that point, so the point is you sealed your fate at that moment, right? And regardless of what you do afterwards. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
You bet. And thank you for those questions of clarification. I think it's very helpful. It's helpful for me too, David. Don't kid yourself. Okay. So going on, I think we're on to the next verse now. Yeah, here we are. V'habasar asher yiga b'chol tameh, and the flesh. I think it's talking about the meat of the sacrifice. Asher yiga b'chol tameh, which comes into contact with anything impure, right? So again, the tremendous, extreme, extraordinary care that has to be taken with everything involved here. If it comes into contact with something impure, lo ye'achel, it should not be consumed. Ba'esh yisaref. At that point, it simply needs to be burned with fire. V'habasar, and regarding basar, regarding meat, kol tahor yochal basar. Anyone who's in a state of purity may consume this meat. Now remember, we're talking here about sacrificial meat. So let's get started on this. There's a major Rashi on this, and we'll just get started here. V'ha basar, and as to the meat itself, shel kodesh shlamim, that is of the holy shlamim. It's of this holy meat that was brought as a shlamim, right? Asher yiga b'chol tameh, which comes in contact with any kind of impurity, lo ye'achel, it should not be consumed. V'habasar, okay, and as to the meat, so it's got this and here as well. L'rabot aver. So what this does is, because it says and the meat, it means it's dividing. In other words, it's talking about more than the meat, so to speak, and it means to include aver shiatza mikzato. This has to do with a limb of the meat that would be consumed, that went out of its place. In other words, where it was supposed to be eaten, shahapnimi mutar, that even though this is, I assume it may or may not be attached to the rest of it, but if part of it goes outside, it doesn't render the entire animal unfit to be eaten and required to be burned. And that's the flesh, so that one can make a distinction between the flesh that might have gone outside the precinct where it was supposed to be eaten, that could be within the walls of Jerusalem, something like that, if it went outside. Nevertheless, any part of it that didn't go outside is still considered kasher. And this is the point at which we are going to stop. So let me make a mark. And I'll stop the share. And to be continued. Okay. Any points before we conclude the session? Okay. Thank you. Thanks for watching.